Cleaning and mapping live drums. Here I can see I have a drum recording. It's kind of okay. Not great timing, but it will get my point across. What I really need to do is try to identify a groove here that's acceptable. Not very tight, but acceptable. In order to clean and so forth, I'm going to be taking a dramatic change of where everything is for my bed track. Once this is done, then I've established a point of where my song starts and where it ends in regards to tempo and everything else. This was recorded without click track, and again, it's just wild recording of drums, and then I can make it sound like real drumming. Or if I had great drumming, I could use the same technique to just tighten up and or map my MIDI related parameters, such as adding instrument tracks and other things that might be of use, such as delays, reverbs, timed choruses, and so forth. Alright, first thing I need to do is always going to save as a version 1.2, and I'll just put an E for edit. Since it's non-destructive editing, I can actually come back to this later, or I could cut and paste it towards the end and come back to it. First thing I really need to identify is where my actual 1 is. In order to do that, I'm going to come up here and turn on tab to transient. I can turn off my groups for the moment. I'm just going to come in and tab to my kick drum track that would be representative of the downbeat. Alright, turn my kit group back on and separate this clip. Command E and get rid of everything before the downbeat. Now if you notice, the downbeat itself is not on a downbeat as far as Pro Tools metering is going. So I need to move this to a downbeat position. For me, it's an odd number measure, which would be measure 3, measure 5, so forth. I'm going to come up, change my operation to spot, click on this now cleaned downbeat, and I'm going to spot it to measure 5. Now I can see that my timing count in the meter doesn't match up, but my downbeat is at measure 5, beat 1. 1, 2, right? So really this should be measure 6 over here. In order to do that, I'm going to go back into the grid mode for a moment, and I'll just stash this bars, beats, and ticks segment here. Since I have the very first measure identified, Command I identifies that beat as measure 5. I'll go ahead and pop that in. So just count 5, 6. Right, that could be measure 6. Now, the easiest way to change my setting is to just tab into that kick drum. Make sure you're on the kick drum. You can always zoom in to look. I'm on the kick. Identify that beat. Instead of measure 6, 3, 256, I'm just going to make it measure 6 even. Alright, so let's go back to measure 5. 3, 4, 3. A little bit off on the in-between beats, but I'll get back to that later. I'm really concerned about the main downbeats, and if I can't find the downbeats, then I can look at the upbeats. Okay, so now that I've got my first measure, I need to continue on to another measure. The other thing I can note is what my particular tempo is. For this is 76.5736, so around 76 beats per minute. 3, 4. Alright, so that should be tab. Zoom in a little bit, which gets me right to my kick and not influenced by some other things. 7 even. So I'm just a little bit off everywhere. Right? Now if I want to check it, I can again go to the start, type in 5, and so forth. Most of the time I wouldn't go back and always check this, but as an example here, we're showing that we now have a 2-bar phrase. So let me just get a couple more measures, get through the end of this phrase, and then we can start to tighten up our MIDI tempo and conform this to either everything else following my live drumming, or in this case, my drumming's not too good. I'm going to go ahead and conform my drumming to a straight MIDI tempo. 3, 4. Now, here's an alternative way to doing this. As you know, once I start getting the groove going, you can see that my grid is close, but not right on. In other words, here's measure 11, but it's slightly off. Instead of using tab to transient as a second alternative, I can now just use the grid, Command I, OK, and then click and drag my tempo till I see it match where I want it to be. Notice how it really brings a lot of other things together. I can easily come into measure 12, do the same thing, and drag here. 2 different ways, same results. Now, if I'm zoomed out too far, I won't be very accurate, but if I zoom in, I can see, well, see, I was off. I need to really lock this in better. It's key that if you have some meter changes or turnarounds, you might need to identify some 1-4-2-4 type of meter changes to bring you back to 1. All right, looking good. Takes a moment, but once you're done, the results are very rewarding. Not to drag things out, I'll come back to that later. This is telling me it's 8 bars evenly selected. Now, this start, end, and length actually work because of this tempo map. Still not very good drumming, but you get the idea. All right, the next thing for tempo mapping, hold your Option key down, expand everything at once in its size. Note on your tracks what your relationship is for the audio tracks. Default is samples, the option is ticks. I want to change everything to ticks. So again, I'm going to save where I'm at with 1.2e, and now I'm going to save as 1.3, and I'm just going to put an EA at the end, meaning I'm going to turn on elastic audio so I can conform to my tempo. Before I do that, hold the Option key down. I'm going to turn all of my tracks onto tick-based, and then for drums, I'm going to choose the rhythmic algorithm. And if I had bass, I'd choose the monophonic. If I had vocals or complex piano or anything, polyphonic, and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and turn on rhythmic. And that's going to take a moment to analyze. Notice that my meter up here for activity on the task manager is in the red. That means it's calculating the overview. It turns back to green when it's finished, which now means elastic audio is turned on, working here at 76,587 approximately. It's going to sound exactly the same, slightly loose. But I do have an opportunity at this point to quantize and or just have things working with the same tempo. For example, I have a delay pattern here. It's being sent to bus 3 and 4. I can put in a rhythmic delay of, say, an 8th note, and then come into my snare drum and send to bus 3 and 4. Now, because I have MIDI tempo, my delays will be in sync. Still doesn't make up for my bad playing. I'm going to go ahead and quantize myself. You can find the quantize feature, Vent Operations Quantize. can also get there by opening up option 0. And you can see it says elastic audio events or audio clips. Clips will do just quantizing the beginning of the clips. Elastic audio events will get all the beats in between. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to eighth notes for a second. And I'm going to move these windows so you can sort of see it. Turn off my rhythm for a minute. And let's take a look. See how it keeps the in-between beats? It's a little different than MIDI quantizing. Alright, so it sounds pretty good. Done with quantize. I now have my audio, 8-bar phrase, still with the variable tempo. I'm going to save, and now I'm going to save as 1.4, and I'm going to list it as tempo. This means I'm going to start shifting my tempos. Once you've identified your main beats, fixed up the rhythm so it's actually working at its original tempos, I now can go through and delete all these tempo markings, which will bring me back to 120, my default tempo. Likewise, this whole segment's going to be locked in still as an 8-bar phrase and currently at the default tempo of 120. Nice. I sound like a drummer. Doing this type of cleaning early on in your session can really lock you in, removing all imperfections for your root or basic bed track. From there you can build overdubs and so forth, such as adding delays. You get the idea. That's it for now.